In late April, Russian media reported that Moscow's supertank, the T-14 Armata, had been deployed to Ukraine, possibly marking a new turning point in the conflict. Considering the pride of the Kremlin, how strong is the T-14 tank? Is it a worthy opponent to Germany's Leopard 2 or the new US M1 Abrams? As the world's most advanced tanks converge on the Eastern European battlefield, Ukraine's impending counteroffensive is predicted to be extremely fierce. However, there are also suggestions that the inclusion of the Armata in the battle may merely be symbolic. Join us in FBNC's World Affairs to find out more. Russia's T-14 Armata, an alleged supertank that was a star of Kremlin propaganda circa 2014, has finally joined battle in Ukraine since the last week of April, according to Russia's RIA. A decade ago, Moscow claimed it would field 2,300 T-14s by 2020, though all that has been visible to date are a few dozen prototypes, reportedly totaling 40 by 2021. Though a fixture at Moscow parades for many years, this notably played no role in Russia's massively costly new invasion of Ukraine that began in 2020 and has, by April of 2023, resulted in at least 1,900 Russian tanks destroyed, abandoned, or damaged. This has forced Russia to reactivate obsolete T-54 and T-62 tanks. Rumors that Russia was finally going to send T-14s into combat began increasing in January-February of 2023, though visual evidence remained elusive. Russian state media asserts that the new tanks have begun providing fire support but have not been used to push forward towards Ukrainian positions in direct assault, where risks of loss would be much higher. RIA sources said T-14 Armata crews have been participating in combat training at a training ground in the Donbas region since the end of 2022. These T-14s were reportedly also armored with additional side and top armor intended to protect against grenade-armed drones and top attack missiles. Yet, the upgraded T-14 tanks are not being used in direct combat situations in Ukraine, a trend observed with Russia's most advanced fighter jets, the Su-57. UK Defense Ministry previously claimed that Russia had utilized its Su-57 Phelon fighter jets in operations against Ukraine. However, to prevent the potential loss of this stealth combat aircraft, Russia is likely conducting these operations within its own borders rather than crossing into Ukrainian airspace. This suggests that Russia is prioritizing the protection of its own sophisticated military assets, opting to use them in strategic and tactical roles rather than risking the loss in direct combat.
Để chống lại drone mang lựu đạn hoặc tên lửa Javelin tập kích từ bên trên.
According to Popular Mechanics, Russia has built so few T-14s that combat testing some in Ukraine cannot impact the overall course of the war. Russia likely hopes that combat testing the T-14 will boost morale and perhaps provide a valuable insight into the type's strengths and weaknesses. That could inform Russia's tank procurement decisions in the mid to long term, which have focused on producing the interim T-90M tank rather than the T-14. But such a move has risks too, because T-14s are so few and the design has yet to enter regular operational service. The type will likely impose a high logistical burden in the field due to unique maintenance, training requirements, and the risk of frequent breakdowns. And should Russia lose a T-14 to Ukrainian fire, the damage to the country's military reputation would be considerable after years of hype. Russia's military is allegedly minimizing that risk by deploying the T-14s for fire support, as opposed to offensive maneuvers where they would be exposed to short-range anti-tank weapons and flanking attacks. It's even possible they're being used as artillery deployed even further behind the front line, though that would be a wasteful use of gun barrels designed for high-velocity direct fire. Ukrainian forces would likely make a special effort to destroy T-14s if their presence were detected in a sector. Already, Ukraine's troops have managed to disable even T-90M tanks with anti-tank grenades dropped by overflying commercial drones. The T-14's new sensor and defenses don't appear configured to detect and defeat threats from directly above. There would also be the risk that T-14s undergoing maintenance could be abandoned should Russian forces be abruptly compelled to retreat in response to Ukrainian offensive. During World War II, Nazi Germany lost many of its Volt Tiger and King Tiger heavy tanks when it had to abandon, broke down, or fuel exhaust vehicles while retreating. According to British newspaper The Sun, Russia's most advanced super tank is equipped with extremely powerful firepower and is covered in a special camouflage layer that makes the machine invisible to the enemy's radar. The tank has an unmanned turret which is equipped with a powerful gun that has a 5-mile range. It has been claimed could reduce the city to rubble in minutes. The Russians also claim it has a special strength coating to make it invisible to enemy radar. In addition, the tanks have a sled armor, providing protection against high-precision anti-tank weapons and close combat weapons such as handheld anti-tank grenade launchers. It also boasts a fully autonomous turret that can rotate 360 degrees at high speed to hit back at threats in any direction. In the coming battle, the Armatas will be up against Ukrainians' latest weapons. These include the Challenger 2 and Leopard 2 main battle tanks, Striker and Bradley armored vehicles, and new artillery system. On paper, the T-14's biggest innovations relate to defense and survivability, crowned by its avant-garde crew-less turret. This allows maximized kinetic armor protection for the crew in the hull. It's possible that the turret itself may be only lightly armored to save weight and focus on the crew protection. That might make disabling a T-14's offensive capability not very difficult, even if harming the crew is. The other big defensive upgrade on the T-14 is its Afghanate active protection system, which includes radar that detect an incoming projectile and dispensers that automatically launch a countercharge to shut down or at least degrade the incoming munition. While the T-14 isn't the first Russian-Soviet tank with a hard-Q APS, if it works better than predecessors, it could greatly reduce the effectiveness of long-distance anti-tank guided missiles approaching from the covered arcs. However, the radar and charges don't appear angled to defeat near-vertical attacks, like a plunging javelin missiles and an overflying drone. Due to its lighter weight, the T-14 is meant to be faster than most Western tanks at 50 miles per hour. On the offensive side of things, the T-14 also has a new 2A82 125mm gun with a higher muzzle velocity than the 2A46 on most Russian tanks. More important are the size and fire control system, which includes both a gunner and commander's independent sight with 4x and 12x magnification. These allegedly can detect tanks 4.6 miles away during the day or 2.2 miles at night. In an interview with News.ru, Major General Sergei Lipova, also known as Hero of Russia, said the Russian T-14 tank has several advantages over the Western Abrams, Leopard, and Challenger tanks. These advantages come from the unique design of the T-14, which offers great protection to the crew against incoming shells. This unique design feature increases the crew's survivability in case of anti-tank weapons hit the tank. He also said the T-14 tank was sent to Ukraine for testing in actual combat conditions. Leopard also pointed out another advantage of the T-14 tank over Western combat vehicles. He mentioned that the Russian tank is lighter, enhancing its maneuverability on the battlefield, particularly in swampy areas. While the T-14, in principle, promises an upgrade to Russia's combat capabilities, the fact that it has languished so long without entering full-scale production hints at a combination of persistent teething issues. Production challenges perhaps related to importing sanctioned microelectronic components and, above all, higher costs than Russia has been willing to shell out per tank. Reports suggest that each T-14 may cost up to $5 million or more to produce. How the T-14 combat trials proceed in Ukraine may help Russia decide whether to boost production of the T-14, or if the type will remain the relic of a military modernization effort, which became unaffordable after the onset of the first wave of Western sanctions in 2014. Russia's tanks are inferior to the M1 Abrams that the US is sending to Ukraine, according to a top Russian defense expert. So far, the US has flashed 31 M1A2 Abrams, while Britain is sending 14 Challenger 2s. Even in export versions, the Abrams variant significantly outperforms any Russian production tank. Ruslan Pukov, director of the Center for Analysis of Strategy and Technologies, a Russian think tank, told the Russian newspaper Moskovskaya Komsomolets. The emergence of Western tanks with powerful guns, modern armor-piercing shells, and fire control system can lead to a sharp increase in distances during tank battles. Pukov also warned that Russia likes modern third-generation anti-tank missiles. Russia does have powerful Carnot laser-guided missiles. However, Russia only has a few Carnots. The bulk of its anti-tank missiles arsenal is composed of Fagot and Congo models that was first deployed in 1970. In any event, an armored group of 30 or 50 Abrams tanks is unlikely to affect the situation in the operational sense, Pukov said. But if there are already 200 or 300 tanks, then they, if used correctly, can become a significant operational factor. According to Business Insider, many of those Russian tanks were destroyed by Ukrainian artillery, as well as infantry armed with anti-tank missiles, rather than by Ukrainian tanks, which highlights a vital point. The M1 Abrams isn't effective solely because of its cannon, armor, and sensors. It's designed to fight as a part of a combined arms team of tanks, infantry, artillery, and aircraft that are linked by a solid communications network. When export models of M1 were employed by poorly trained Iraqi and Saudi troops in Iraq and Yemen, even the Abrams took heavy losses at the hands of lightly armed insurgents. Perhaps Russia should focus less on the technical characteristics of American tanks and more on how to use Russian tanks better. This has wrapped up our program today. Thanks for watching and see you next time.